Shalom, shalom. Another Sabbath lesson. The title of this video, or this lesson, is called "The Castaways." Was gonna, like I said last video, play music, but I see that it looks like we got a claim on that last video that was aired on Thursday from the music. So I'm not gonna try that. You know what I'm saying? Maybe we'll work out something later, but nonetheless, we're here for edification, right? So, Sabbath lesson called "The Castaways." Um, this lesson or this video was inspired because I feel like the Most High God was giving me a confirmation to do it, as we do, as we feel like with all the videos that we get on here and teach. We don't try to teach anything out of our own vain opinion or out of our own might or our own will, right? We all feel led to do these lessons. So all praise to the Most High God first and foremost for even giving us the unction and continually feeding us with things to help feed the sheep, right? So shalom to all the brothers and sisters. Shabbat shalom, peaceful Sabbath to all those, peaceful rest day. That might watch this video, get on here live, or that might watch this video down the line. Shalom to all the, like we always say, you could be doing anything, but you're keeping the commandments, you're fellowshipping, right? We're gathering together in these last days. Shalom to those people that might not know that they're Israel yet, right? That are just kind of getting in the swing of things and trying to learn more, right? And increase in knowledge, young or old, right? The Bible says we have to become as newborn babes, meaning what? We got to forget everything that we was taught and relearn this thing, right? Shalom to the cleavers out there, the people of the other nations that can notice we are the Israelites of the Bible and notice that our God is the God above all gods, right? And they know their respective places. And they say, like it says in Zechariah, we want to take the skirt of him that's a Jew because we know that God is with you, right? Paraphrasing greatly. But nonetheless, man, get started into this. This lesson was inspired by a conversation that we had last night. We went out Friday night for a little camp downtown Macon. Got pretty wild out there, but we had some good dialogues. One brother that we talked to, they never stay for a whole conversation, but he mentioned that I'll show you. Give me your number, bro. I can't stay, but give me your number. I'm gonna show you that the Most High God cast away His people. Right? I know what y'all thinking. Why didn't y'all just read him the precept? Well, we read him the precept. Hath God cast away His people? God forbid. We read him, right? But he still says, God cast away His people, which God did, but God is calling them back. All right. Also, the other confirmation that I had to do this lesson was I was reading in Leviticus, and in Leviticus, it kind of talked about the latter days towards the latter end of the book of Leviticus, and I believe Leviticus chapter 26, and it talked about the casting away of God's people. So I want to kind of bring it together for clarity in this video today. Salakia. Where do I want to start? We'll start at Leviticus 26. Let me put that up on the screen. Nope, that's not Leviticus 26. Oh, yeah, and I want to say for those that's in the Middle Georgia area, we do go out on Sabbath days downtown Macon on Poplar Street. So if you want to, slide by, we usually get out around there anywhere from like 4:30-ish to 5-ish, kind of stay till the sun go down. Right. We'll start at verse 3. Actually, I want to read it from the chapter. Right, Leviticus 26 and verse 3. It says, if ye walk in my statutes and keep my commandments and do them, Then I will give you rain in due season, and the land shall yield her increase, and the trees of the field shall yield their fruit. Right? This sounds like a few precepts, right? A few precepts come to mind when we read this, showing that the Bible is congruent, showing that the Bible is consistent throughout the whole thing from the beginning to the end, right? And if it's consistent, we know that, that kind of confirms itself. There's no contradictions, right? So I know two scriptures that come to mind to me, right, is Deuteronomy 28 and verse 1, right? When we start going into them cursings, it reads about them. It reads about the blessings first, right? If you keep my commandments, if you do my statutes, right? That's how it's kind of starting out here. Verse 4 kind of reminds me of, you hear my son in the background, Salakia, man. The young brother likes to talk in the morning. But it says, verse 4, it says, then I would give you rain in due season. That right there kind of highlights to me Galatians 6 and 9, right? And let us not grow weary in well doing, for in, I believe it says, due season you shall reap if you faint not, right? So that's kind of brings that to mind to me, right? Salakia. Shalom.
Shalom. Can you hear me?
Khan. Right. And where do I want to read this down to? Read in verse 5. It says, and your threshing shall reach unto the vintage, and the vintage shall reach unto the sowing time, and ye shall eat your bread to the full and dwell in your land of safety, right? Once again, going into them blessings. Verse 6, and I will give peace in the land, and ye shall lie down, and none shall make you afraid, right? It don't matter how big they are, how mighty of a nation they are, how many numbers they got. He said, nobody's going to make us afraid, right? If we kept his commandments. And I will rid evil beasts out of the land, neither shall the sword go through your land, right? The blessings, right? I want to start out reading these blessings because I want y'all to know that even though the Lord cast us away, right, we had the opportunity to do right, right? It was all on us. That's how a covenant works. If somebody breaks the covenant, they're at fault, right? You can't blame the person that issues out the judgment or the condemnation because you did something wrong, right? You just got to take it to the chin. I'm going to go to verse 23. It says, and if you will not be reformed by these things, but will walk contrary unto me, like I said, man, the Bible's congruent, man. Especially the law. The law is congruent. It's consistent. This sounds like Deuteronomy 28:15, right? Verse 24. Then will I also walk contrary unto you. Right. So a lot of people say, man, why would God do this? That's not the God of that's not my God. My God wouldn't do that. Well, you need to ask the question, why did our people do what we did? Why do we still do today what we do? Right. And not take God serious. Right. We got to ask ourselves that because he told us from the beginning, he said, if we don't walk with him, he's not going to walk with us. And he also said this, and will punish you yet 7 times for your sins. Ooh, 7 times for your sins. So he let us know that, right? Verse 25 says, and I will bring a sword upon you that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. Because we broke the covenant, man. This is why we got cast away, right? So a lot of times I know when I was new in the truth, I was like, man, I'm an Israelite. God loved me. God never cast me away. God never casted us away. He did cast us away, right? And a lot of people that know the Bible or study the Bible will understand that he cast his people away, right? But the controversy is he allowing them to come back? Is he still dealing with his people that he cast away? Was the cast away for forever? That's the controversy, right? So we're gonna bring some clarity to that today. And I will bring a sword upon you that shall avenge the quarrel of my covenant. And when ye are gathered together within your cities, I will send the pestilence among you, and ye shall be delivered into the hand of the enemy. Right? So right there, we just read the blessings and the curses, but we read it from Leviticus chapter 26, right? Once again, going into the castaways. Start here. Where do I want to go next? Let's go to Deuteronomy 30, right? Deuteronomy 30. It's gonna pretty much wrap up what we just read. All right, we'll start at verse 1, and then we'll skip to, I believe, verse 7, right? Verse 1 says, you can read it for me.
Deuteronomy chapter 30 and verse 1. And it shall come to pass when all these things are come upon thee, the blessing and the curse, which I
Right?
have
The
set before
blessing
thee.
and the curse, right? Meaning, guess what? That blessing happened first. We was a mighty nation, right? We were all following God's commandments for a short time. And the Most High God blessed us. He gave us land. It was plentiful, right? He stayed true to his word. And also the curse, man. We also got cursed. It's all written in the word. So you can't get mad at the world. You can't get mad at God. You can't get mad because you're living in a curse. That's the fulfillment of prophecy. It was supposed to happen. God knew it was going to happen. He knew he was going to cast us away, right? Keep going.
Which I have set before thee, and thou shalt call them to mind among all the nations, whither the Lord thy God has driven thee.
Right? So he even here in Deuteronomy 30, it says that we would be called to mind among the nations whether he has driven us, meaning he knew, right? All that stuff was rhetorical. When he said, if you listen to me, I'll bless you. If you don't listen to me, I'm gonna put all these curses on you. Those are rhetorical statements, right? He already knew what was going to happen because in Deuteronomy 30, he wrote this, right? He knew he was going to be gathering us from among all the nations. Why? Because he knew he was going to be casting us away, right? So I want to make that known. If we could drop down to verse 7. Right? If you could read verse 7.
And the Lord thy God will put all these curses upon thine enemies and on them that hate thee, which persecuted thee.
Right? So now we're seeing how the castaway is being reversed, right? Read verse 8.
Verse number 8. And thou shalt return and obey the voice of the Lord and do all his commandments, which I commanded thee this day.
Right? So we're going to return. He casted us away, and now we're going to return, right? Some may call that, some may know that by, or somebody know that as the term salvation, right? We're returning unto him and he's allowing it. All right. Also known as grace. Right. Read verse 9.
And the Lord thy God will make thee plenteous in every work of thine hand, in the
Right.
fruit of thy body.
And I want y'all to know that this is after he gathers us from all the nations that he spread us out to, right? So we get really in the video now. You know what I'm saying? God cast away his people. Are they going to stay cast away? No, man. He lets us know early in the book that he's going to gather them, right? Keep going.
In the fruit of thy body, in the fruit of thy cattle, and in the fruit of thy land for good.
Right.
For the Lord will again rejoice over thee for good, as he rejoices over thy fathers.
Right. So he's going to rejoice over us, man. He's not casting us away for forever, man. Verse 26. Deuteronomy 32 and 26. If you could read this.
Khan, I said I would scatter them into corners. I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men.
Right. So breaking it down, man. God did cast away his people. It was prophesied that we would be scattered to corners, right? And I always think about it, right? The people over there in Southern Africa or East Africa or West Africa or wherever a tribe may be that's claiming to be the nation of Israel. Hey, look, they're no more important than the people that scattered in the Americas, which are no more important than the people that are scattered in South America, which is no more important than people that scattered in the islands, right? We've all been scattered, right? You can't depend on one nation or one tribe here or one tribe there or one clan here or one race here. You can't depend on one of them to magically appear with heritage. And they did this, they do this in this land. No, we've all been scattered. And guess what? It says, I would make the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Meaning, guess what? They don't got it all over there, wherever you're thinking they got it all. We don't got it all over here, wherever we think that we got it all, right? He made the remembrance no more when he scattered us. Right now, we're getting it back slowly and surely, right? Knowledge is increasing, right? But I say that to say this: we're all equal, man. He scattered all of us, right? I want to go to Hosea.
Yeah, you don't want to read the Romans first.
I got Romans down here.
I know, but I like I mean it's your lesson, kind, but I like going to Romans first. Um, but either way is fine. It's like you're going to a different Hosea anyway. Let me just shut up. But I do want to say this though. A lot of the brothers going over us being casted away, right? And then a lot of us will have questions like, well, we know that he didn't cast us away. And you got to put your mind in the perspective, right? He casted us away, but he didn't cast us away, if that makes sense. And I'm going to make sense of it really quick with this analogy right here, right? So imagine you have a disobedient child, right? And they're on their last straw. So you try keeping them in the house, put them in timeout and whatnot. It didn't work. So now it's time for you to cast them away. You might send them to grandma's house. Y'all remember Boys in the Hood? Trey started acting up. He had to go live with his father, right? You might send him to boarding school or military camp or something like that, right? When you cast them away, right? Yes, you have casted them out of your sight, but are they still your child? Yes, they still are your child, right? And so when we get into these verses of yeah, he casted us away, but no, he didn't cast us away. You have to understand that even though he cast us away, did he choose another people? Or were we still his people, even though we were cast away? We were still his people, and he was still dealing with us. It was just through judgment uh versus blessings, through curses rather than blessings, right?
Man. Another great analogy would be like a relationship, right? In a relationship, sometimes, man, you just love her, right? Sometimes you fell in love with this woman. Sometimes you fell in love with this man, right? But it seems like y'all always got friction. It seems like y'all don't listen to each other. It seems like one of y'all is always messing up. And you come to the conclusion, even in worldly wisdom, people will tell you, you got to let them go. You got to let her go. If it's meant to be, it'll come back. You got to cast away sometimes for them to come back. And that's why the Most High God is, made us castaways, but he's expecting our return, right? If I can, right. So, for example, in 1 Corinthians 7:11, right, it says, and if she depart, let her remain unmarried. Why is she to remain unmarried? Because the Most High God wants the return, right? We are likened unto a bride too. He wants our return. Yeah, he cast us away. We departed, but he wants our return, right? It says, or be reconciled to her husband, right? So once we're cast away, we're to be reconciled again, right? So the castaway, man, yes, it happened, but
And
then
it's supposed to be better too. When you get that reconciliation, you're supposed to come back a better person. You're not supposed to be coming back defiled. When you send your kids to military camp, or you send your kids to grandma's house, or if you had a bad pet, an animal, right? You send your dog away, and it's time for them to reconciliate back with you, come back into your home from you casting away. You expect them to have a better behavior, right? You expect them to be your pet 2.0, right? You don't expect them to come back defiled. You don't expect them to come back even worse. And that's what the Most High is expecting of us. He casts us away to put us through that fire so we can come back like pure gold. But a lot of us, man, we let this castaway be our detriment, and we got even worse.
right. And like we always like try to make sense of it on the street, man. When we evangelize, like Beyond Scared Straight, them parents took their time and found a program for their kids to go to, and it was actual prison, man. It's actual jail to scare their kids, right? They put them on that. They took them in, put them on that bus. They got what's it called when you get in they got what's it called when you doing like they got processed, right? They did all of that, man. Got embarrassed, got screamed at, yelled at, put in
Hey,
shackles,
some
chains.
of them kids was even crying like, "Why are you doing this to me? Do you not love me?"
Right. Aren't you my mom? Aren't you my dad? I'm sorry, I'll never do it again, right? But you know that when you break that covenant with your parents, just like you break that covenant with the Most High God, hey, He got to pour out judgment. And so that castaway happens. Your parents go home. Your parents might still feel bad, but guess what? They went home. They cast you away and gave you time to reflect. So now when you're looking at them beyond that glass, right, your attitude towards them, like the brother said, should be in a better spirit. You should have learned some lessons from that castaway, right? You want to be reconciled now. You want to return now. You understand what your parents are doing for you. Now, like the brother said as well, man, you got that 2/3, right? When at the end of Beyond Scared Straight, they always play that little music on repeat or that instrumental, and they go through people's lives. So and so is doing much better and joined the animal shelter and now is helping the community. And you got that, right? They came back better. Then you have those people that went back straight back to jail. So you got the 2/3 too. That's not gonna return to the Most High God. But the whole point is to what? Is to return to the Most High God, right? The law, right? I love this, right? Galatians 3 and what, 24. The law is our schoolmaster that led us to Christ. In the law, you get punished for breaking the commandments, right? That punishment is supposed to correct you, right? Like the sister said, chastise you as well, right? It's supposed to get you on the right path so you can find Christ. And that's what it was, man. We were put, according to the law, we had to go into a servitude. We had to be cast away because that was in the contract. So the law had us do that. The law had the Most High God do that, and that led us to Christ, right? So, and like the sister said, that chastisement is love, right? When your parents is doing all that stuff to you, right, trying to get you right, it's love because they don't want to see you down the road as a grown adult going through something that they could have prevented, right? They saw the end from the beginning, just like the Most High God sees the end from the beginning in all of our lives, right? If you could read Hosea 9 and 17.
The book of Hosea, chapter 9 and verse 17, my God will cast them away because they did not hearken unto him, and they shall be wanderers among the nation.
Right? We're wanderers around the nation, right? We're trying to find our heritage, right? Everywhere you go, we're trying to find some type of heritage to cling on to, right? And that's making us wanderers, man. We join in everything. We want to be a part of everything except for ourselves because the Most High God made the remembrance of us no more. He cast us away. And that's what it means by when the God cast us away, he turned his face from us, as other scriptures said, right? He wasn't there to answer our prayers because what? They did not hearken unto him. So if we didn't listen to him, why would he listen to us? Right? We're made in his likeness and his image. He's a jealous God, right? He gets angry, right? He stuck to his part of the covenant, but we didn't stick to ours, right? So don't get mad at him. Get mad at yourself, right? I want to go to Ezekiel 11 and verse 17. You could read this for me.
Therefore say, thus saith the Lord God, I will even gather you from the people and assemble you out of the countries where ye have been scattered, and I will give you the land of Israel.
Right. So a few things come to mind when we read this, right? The new covenant, right? Him making the new covenant with the house of Judah, the house of Israel, right? And giving us that land. He's fulfilling a promise. But this is also assurance that yes, we were cast away, because if there was no casting away, he wouldn't need to assemble us, right? From the countries where we were scattered, but he will also be waiting for our return, aka the prodigal son, right? The prodigal son left, but when he came back, the Most High God or his father was standing there with open arms, ready to throw him a party, right? So let me go. And the thing about the prodigal son too is, right, he was scared to come back because he didn't know how his father would react. A lot of us, we know that the Most High God cast us away. And a lot of us, we either get mad at the Most High God and say, why would he cast us away? And some of us, we don't want to come back because we feel like he's mad at us and he don't love us. So we want to cling to these other religions instead, or worship ourselves, or worship creation, or do stuff to make us feel good, when the Most High God is just waiting for us to come back. He's waiting for us to listen to him, right? And once we come back, right, we'll see that he has a lot prepared for us. Jeremiah 32 and 37. Hold up. This is not Jeremiah, I don't think. Jeremiah, 32. 32 and 37. Right?
Behold, I will gather them out of all the countries whither I have driven them in mine anger and in my fury and in great wrath, and I will bring them again unto this place, and I will cause them to dwell safely.
Right? That's just the God that we serve, man. He'll show his anger, his fury, and great wrath, right? The castaway, but he'll also cause us to dwell safely. That's the God we serve, man. It's a just God, right? A God of balance. Salakia. Now, when I went to Baruch chapter 4, I slick wanted to read the whole thing, but I'm gonna get to the point in Baruch. I'm gonna go to Baruch 4. I'm gonna start at verse 24. But if you got some time, man, go ahead and read all of Baruch 4. It's a great breakdown of the castaway and the return. Where is that? And shalom to the brother Yeshaya. If you could read this.
Like as now the neighbors of Zion have seen your captivity, so shall they see shortly your salvation from our God, which shall come upon you with great glory and brightness of the everlasting.
Right. Right. So the nations have seen us been cast away. They might say, like, we don't have a God. They might say that God has forsaken us. They might say that we'll never be the same. Don't even worry about those people. But surely they're going to see our salvation, right? Salvation is synonymous with the return. Salvation is synonymous with us coming out of captivity, right? That's literally salvation in the Bible. According to the Bible, that's what salvation is, right? Read verse 25 for me.
My children, suffer patiently the wrath that is come upon you from my God, from God.
From who?
From God.
Right. So yes, this castaway happened from God. And yes, the wrath came from God, but he still called us my children, right? Even though it hurt, right? Physically, spiritually, emotionally, it came from him. He told us to suffer patiently, right? Keep going.
For thy enemy has persecuted thee, but shortly thou shalt see his destruction and shalt tread upon his neck.
That's just the God we serve, man. And that's salvation, right? Read verse 26.
My delicate ones have My delicate ones have gone rough ways and were taken away as a flock caught of the enemies.
Right. We were taken away as a flock, right? We were cast away, man. When you cast away, man, you living in rough ways. If you watch the movie Castaway, man, the brother was going through it, right? When the Most High God cast us away, we was going through it, man. In the movie Castaway, he made up a fake friend. It was like a volleyball, I believe. He drew a face on it, or it was like a coconut, I believe, or something like that.
It was a volleyball. His name was Wilson.
Right, right. Just making up idols. And when we got cast away, we did the same thing, just making up idols, anything to cling on to. Like I said earlier in the scriptures, man, we were wanderers among the nations, right? We were cast away, but the Most High God always had a plan to bring us back, right? So Before you brothers got on, I was saying how last night a brother was saying that we was cast away. And I felt like we should bring clarity in this video to people that may think that we were cast away, because clearly whenever you read about the casting away, shortly following in that same chapter, he talks about how he gonna bring us back every time. So we gotta be, we can't for example, in the world, in resumes, you have something called buzzwords, right? You can't just look at buzzwords. Oh, he said cast away, and now you make a whole doctrine of his people being cast away, right? You got to keep reading, man. You got to keep reading, because literally a few verses later, it'll tell you every time it says they were cast away, it'll say he's taking us back. He has something prepared for us. He's ready for our return, right? Or it's going to happen in the latter days when they come back to me. Covenant, promised land. He says it in so many words, but there's always a reverse to that being cast away.
Can I bring out a precept?
Con.
I want to get. Did you already get Romans chapter 11?
Nah, I had it on here though.
Okay, well I'll wait till you get to it.
All right.
Let you bring it up.
All right. I'm gonna go back to Leviticus 26. Right. Because a lot of people, man, they'll read stuff in the Bible and think it contradicts itself. No, you just have to read the Bible with common sense, like you're having a conversation with somebody, man. In a conversation, you understand the trajectory of the conversation, right? So even like through a conversation, it may seem like somebody's contradicting himself through speech, but you know what he's trying to say, right? It's the same thing with the Bible. You got to understand what the Bible's trying to say to understand that it's not contradicting itself, right?
Yeah, man. A lot of people take the Bible too literal at times, when you have to be able to decipher and discern, common sense and practicality, you know, and how a story, like the storyline can be going, and then somebody might say something out of emotion, and then you think that it's contradicting something. Well, you have to, not only do you have to put everything in context with precept upon precept, line upon line, but you got to also have the knowledge and the wherewithal to understand what's going on within context with emotions and feelings, and when things are being said in a certain way, right? You have to have that common sense, and that just comes with maturity of reading the Bible, to be honest.
Come on, man. If we could read Leviticus 26 and 33, gonna read it through 35.
Cons, verse 33, and I will scatter you among the heathen, and will draw out a sword after you, and your land shall be desolate, and your cities waste.
Right, going into the castaway, right? Keep going.
Then shall the land enjoy her Sabbath, as long as it lieth desolate, and ye be in your enemy's land. Even then shall the land rest and enjoy her Sabbath.
So even with the castaway, we're not supposed to be in our land, right? So we're not supposed to be in our land. A lot of people may think that we're in our land, but we're not supposed to be. We're supposed to be letting the land rest, right? Keep reading.
Or is as long as it 36, and upon them that are left alive of you, I will send a faintness into their hearts in the lands of their enemies, and the sound of a shaken leaf shall chase them, and they shall flee and fleeing from a sword, and they shall fall when none pursue it.
Right, right. And this happened multiple times, right? You could see this I believe when Jeremiah was trying to tell the people, hey, look, go into captivity, it's our judgment. Right? Babylon's gonna come and possess us, but God's gonna take care of us. Right. And the people's like, no, we're not gonna listen to you. Surely God wouldn't give us over. Right. And Jeremiah was like, man, look, if y'all fight it, even when you escape, he's gonna make sure he's found you. And he already knows where y'all. Jeremiah let them know he already knows you're gonna try to escape to Egypt again. He said, God's going to come and destroy you and Egypt. So, the Most High God promised this, right? He promised the castaway, this prophecy, right? But I want to read verse 44.
And yet for all that, when they be in the land of their enemies, I will not cast them away.
You will what?
Neither will I will not cast them away.
So now a lot of y'all will say, well, he's going back and forth. He's contradicting himself. He just said that he was going to cast them away in all these verses, and now he's saying, I will not cast them away. Like I said, man, you have to read. I hate saying with the context of the conversation, because we always say in context, but you got to read with common sense, reading comprehension. What is he saying here? He's saying even though he cast them away, he's not going to let them continue to be cast away, right? Keep going from neither.
Neither will I abhor them to destroy them utterly and to break my covenant with them, for I am the Lord thy God.
Right. So that covenant is unbreakable, right? Even if we break it, he'll just, you know what I'm saying, wait until a new generation to restore
Right.
it.
That's one thing about the Most High God. The Most High God is not gonna play tit for tat. You know, like in relationships, we play tit for tat. She does something I don't like, so I do something that they don't like. The Most High is mature. He's saying, "Hey, look, I made a covenant with them. They're doing stuff I don't like, but I'm still gonna hold up my end. I'm still gonna hold up my bargain because that's just the man he is, right? He's a just God, right? And so he's not gonna do to us what we did to him." But we are facing some consequences, which were in the contract. So he's in the rights to do so.
Right. Exactly, man. Want to go back to, I want to go back to
Con,
Baruch chapter 2 and verse 30.
con.
All right. If you could read this for me.
Con. For I knew that they would not hear me, because it is a stiff-necked people. But in the land of their captivities they shall remember themselves.
Right. In the land of their captivities, they shall remember themselves. Right. So even though he cast us away, wherever he casted us away to, he's going to call us back. Now we'll go to Romans, right? Romans 11. We're going to read verses 2 through 3. And if I don't get the point that either you guys are trying to make in the book of Romans, y'all can bring out y'all's points too.
Con.
Right?
You said 2 through what?
2 through 3. Well, 2 through 4. My bad.
Con. God has not cast away his people, which he foreknew. Wot ye not?
Well, actually, start from verse 1.
I say then, has God cast away his people? God forbid. For I also am an Israelite.
Right.
Of the
So it
seed
said
of
God
Abraham.
forbid. So off rip in the New Testament, it tells us what? God has not cast away his people. But God did cast away his people. They've been scattered. They've been X, Y, and Z. So this is why Paul is having to have this conversation in the first place. Because even then, they're looking like, man, God did cast away his people, man. God, look, we know that, Judah, Benjamin, and Levi, they got their thing going on. But I mean, there was 12 tribes now. Come on, God cast away his people. Right? So Paul is having this conversation saying, has God cast away his people? Trying to encourage some of these Gentiles or people scattered in these Gentile nations, right? That, hey, look, you're still an Israelite, right? Keep going.
For I also am an Israelite of the seed of Abraham, of the tribe of Benjamin.
Right. And he also is letting them know, I'm not saying that, hey, look, the Jews, Benjamin, Levi, and Judah, I'm not saying that, God cast them away either, just because that they're in some wickedness or they're being hypocritical, right? That's not what I'm trying to say here, right? Keep going to verse 2,
God has not cast away his people, which he foreknew.
right?
What ye not?
He not cast us away, right? Which he foreknew. So if somebody tells you that God cast away his people, and we go to the New Testament and show that God has not cast away his people, it should be over with there. But we know, like I said, buzzwords, people see stuff and create whole doctrines off it, create whole beliefs off of it, right? And we just got to keep reading. Keep going.
What ye not what the scripture saith of Elias? how he maketh intercession to God against Israel, saying,
So Elias, right? Elijah, right? He what? He made intercession unto God. He had some may say that Jonah spirit. He was speaking to God against Israel, just like Jonah was speaking to the Israelites in Nineveh, right? Or speaking against the Israelites in Nineveh, saying they weren't worthy of reconciliation. They wasn't worthy of salvation, right? I've been preaching here. They've been slandering me. They don't want to listen to me. And you want me to go again? So to try to get them to return to you? No, right? This is kind of how Elias or Elijah was feeling, right? Keep going to verse 3.
Khan, Lord, they have killed the prophets and dig down thine altars, and I am left alone, and they seek my life.
Right. So, I mean, a lot of people wish that we was gone, man. Even a lot of our own people, man, wish that our people were cast away, that God didn't deal with the nation, right? A lot of us, we get in this truth and we see how wicked our people are, and we just like, man, a lot of us, a few camps, man, that's all they do is talk about wicked Jake and wicked Eve, and I hope the Most High God bring judgment on you fools. I hope, you know what I'm saying? That's a lot of us get in that same spirit, man. But read verse 4.
But what saith the answer of God unto him? I have
Right? What does
reserved to
God have to
myself
say?
7,000 men who have not bowed the knee to the image of Baal.
Right? So God, right, he knows that there's going to be 2/3 of us that's not going to be reconciled, but God has called a reconciliation because of the covenant he made with our fathers, man. So regardless of the castaway that happened, Most High God, he saved us for a time as this, right? Did y'all have points to bring out in Romans?
Not 11.
Where'd you want to go to?
The classic, pairing up the Old Testament with the New Testament, Romans 9, and I think is it 25, and then Hosea 1 and 10.
We can go back to Romans 11 afterwards.
You want to hit Romans 11 first, since we're here?
Khan, you can scroll down to Romans 11. I want to say start at verse 22.
Right. Romans 11 and verse 22. Behold, therefore, the goodness and the severity of God on them which fell, severity. But toward thee, goodness, if thou continue in his goodness. Otherwise, thou also shalt be cut off.
Verse 23 is the point.
Verse 23. And they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, shall be grafted in. For God is able to graft them in again.
Right. So when you talk about being cut off, right? When you talk about being cast away, and look, it says, and they also, if they abide not still in unbelief, right, shall be grafted in. So, like the brother's saying, we were casted away for unbelief. You know what I'm saying? For our lack of faith from the beginning of time, right? Our lack of faith is the reason why we were cast away. Our lack of faith was the reason why the Most High sent us to multiple captivities. Even during the time of Christ, our lack in faith in Christ is why a lot of our people were suffering some of the things that they were suffering. But hey, if we abide not still in unbelief, hey, we should be grafted in. For why? For the Most High is able to graft them in again. And like, we know how people like to use this chapter and try to tie it in, you know what I'm saying? But the point I like to always hit is on Romans 11 and 23, is because we're able to be grafted in again. Yea, though we were cast off, like it says in verse 1, the Most High did not ultimately do away with his people, right? Has he forsaken Israel and now it's no more Israel, no more? No, that's a lie, right? So he's able to graft us in again. If you could go down one more verse to verse, I want to say 25.
Right. Verse 25. For I would not, brethren, that ye should be ignorant of this mystery, lest ye should be wise in your own conceits, that blindness in part is happened to Israel until the fullness of the Gentiles be come in.
right? A blindness had happened to Israel, right? And then you read verse 26 when you say, and so all Israel shall be saved, right? As it is written. We got to understand that though we were cast away, we weren't cast away. You know what I'm saying? Like, so we understand that two things can be true. Yes, we were cast away, but the Most High did not cast us away, as in He did not just utterly destroy us, and now there's no more nation of Israel on the face of the planet. You know, we got to understand what it means to be cast away. We got to understand what the scriptures say when it says that, you know what I'm saying, hey, the Most High forsook us, or the Most High turned His face from us, right? Bakan, are you?
Khan, and Denal, if you wouldn't mind waiting just a couple more seconds, my closing precepts kind of go into what the brother just went into, and then I'll do that, and then I'll just let you use your precept as a closing. But I like how he went to this right here. It says, "Unto the fullness of the Gentiles be come in." A lot of the controversy is in Romans chapter 11, right? Hitting that hard and saying, grafting, the graft in, right? But we know it says graft them in again. So when it says the fullness of these Gentiles be come in, what is that talking about, right? Right? We're talking about being cast away here, right? And we mentioned the movie, The Castaway. He was cast away to an island. Matter of fact, there's plenty of movies that have that in the title, The Castaways, Castaways, The Castaway, Castaway, whatever. Usually it's dealing with the island, right? So I want to go here real quick to kind of wrap that all into one. The island, right? Like the movies, the Gentiles, right? And being grafted in again, meaning you was already a part of it once, but you're going back, right? Let's go. You have something to say?
Con, just to give anybody the full context of 11, and to give you some ammo of what 11 is talking about, the brother brought out the most important precepts in the chapter, right, brother Yeshaya, in 25 and verse 26. That's literally the conclusion of everything that's being talked about. So you get the context with verse 1 and 2 talking about has God cast away his people, and the people that he's talking about is Israel. And then at the end of the chapter where it says the conclusion, and so all Israel shall be saved, right after it talks about the Gentiles being grafted in. So the Gentiles that he's talking about has to be a part of Israel, if that makes sense. But that's the whole context. If anybody ever brings you to Romans 11, just tell them to read the first part, right? And then read the second part. Because if everybody's confused about the middle, the first part and the last part is gonna bring you home for sure.
Right. So just like the brother said, you can go straight to Isaiah 11, Romans 11, Isaiah 11. They kind of mirror each other, right? You might get a little lost in a loop because you saw the word Gentiles, the fullness of the Gentiles be come in, be fulfilled, or come in, right? You might be thrown for a loop because all your life, man, you just seen Gentiles being other nations because we didn't study the Old Testament like that, right? But don't fret, don't get in a panic, right? Don't make up a doctrine. Make sense of it. Isaiah 11 will pair up with Romans 11. Let's read this. Isaiah 11 and 10,
And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people.
right?
To it shall the Gentiles seek, and
Who
his rest shall be
who seek?
glorious.
Who's gonna seek?
The Gentiles seek.
Right? And his rest shall be glorious, right? So now the next verse is going into those Gentiles seeking, right? Let's read what it says. The book of Isaiah, chapter 11 and verse 11,
And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand against the second time to recover the remnant of his people.
right? That's that ensign for the people. So Romans 11 and 11 is just breaking down. I mean, Salakia, Isaiah 11 and 11 is just breaking down Isaiah 11 and 10, right? He said he was going to have a root of Jesse, right? As an ensign for the people. So the Lord's hand, right, is going to recover his people. That's what the ensign means, man, to recover, right? Because they're cast away. But keep reading, it gets better.
Which shall be left from Assyria
Right.
and
So
from
guess what?
Egypt.
Read this slow, right? Which shall be left from Assyria, right? A lot of us, we don't know that in the Assyrian lands, we have people there. We only worried about Africa. We only worried about America. We only worried about some parts in Mexico, right? But guess what? There's some of us in Assyria. Keep going.
And from Egypt.
Oh, you're Egyptian. The Most High God put a difference between us and the Egyptians. Yeah, he did. But our people have been scattered everywhere, right? So these people that you're considering Gentiles, right? Like I said, verse 11 is just breaking down verse 10, right? The Gentiles are going to seek till the Gentiles come in, or to the fullness of the Gentiles come in, right? These people that we think are Gentiles, guess what? A lot of us have been scattered here, right? Go to Pathros. I mean, Salaki, I said it, but keep reading.
And from Pathros.
Right? Even John was in the Isle of Pathros, right? Or was it Patmos?
It was Patmos.
Patmos. But even in Pathros, right? I believe that's like Northern Africa. Keep going.
And from Cush.
Right? Ethiopians. Oh, she's Ethiopian? He's Ethiopian? That's not our people. He's Eritrean? We got people there too, right? They might seem like Gentiles though. Keep going.
And from Elam.
And from who?
Elam.
Right? Hey, look, a lot of these Elamites, some of them, there are people, man. We're scattered everywhere. And this is why we look like Gentiles, man. This is why we're considered Gentiles, especially because you might see an Elamite man that looks. And look, when we first got our pediatrician in Atlanta, we went to this office and it was a bunch of Elam. And some of them girls in there in scrubs look like Eve. They look like Israelite women, right? So that's why what I'm saying is, hey man, Gentiles, just because they pray to Allah 3 times a day, or how many every times a day, a lot of them are our people, man. A lot of them are gonna wake up too, right? When that ensign, or when the Lord's hand comes to recover, right? Keep going.
And from Shinar.
Right?
And from Hamath.
Right?
And from the islands of the sea.
Right? And all these different islands, man, that got their own weird heritages and cultures and ways of life and doing things. Guess what? The Most High God is waiting for them to come in, man, because they were cast away, literally, to these islands, cast away to these foreign lands, cast away among these nations. But the Most High God's going to recover what he cast away, right? Now I'm gonna go to back to Romans 9. You want me to go to Romans 9 first, or Hosea first?
Okay, you can go to Romans 9 first, 9 and 25.
Right.
Man, I'm just bringing this out as well, just to show the storyline, how it is still the same from the Old Testament to the New Testament. It's a scripture I like to go to a lot, especially for our brothers and sisters that love, the epistles of Paul, right? Especially Romans, because everything that he's talking about, you have to acknowledge that he is nothing new, right? Even though he's saying it in a new setting, he's still just repeating what was said back in the day, right? And so we're gonna link these two together. Which two? The Old Testament and the New Testament. So this is Romans 9 and 25.
Right.
As he also saith, as he saith also in OC, Salakia. In OC, if you know, it goes back to the prophet Hosea, right? I will call them my people, which were not my people, and her beloved, which was not beloved. Now, to the naked eye, to the to the unlearned, if you're just sticking straight to the New Testament, of course, you probably would think this is everybody except for the Israelites, right? I believe at one point in my life, I thought the same thing. But one part that everybody, just skips over or fails to recognize is the first part where he says, as he saith also in OC, right? And so when we understand that OC is Hosea, we know that there's a whole book of Hosea in the Old Testament, right? So we got to go find where he said this in Hosea, right? And we're going to see what he was actually talking about, because apparently the same thing he was talking about in Hosea is coming to pass now in the book of Romans, right? So if we go to Hosea 1 and 10.
Right. I also want to make note too that There was a reason why he cast us away that it mentions in it's like you said 1 and 10.
Yeah.
There's a reason why he cast us away. It's mentioned in Romans as well. To provoke jealousy, man. To provoke jealousy. Because we were going off, right? The southern kingdom started going off. Right? I'll let the brother finish this.
Right? And this is the book of Hosea, chapter 1 and 10. Yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea. So we can already see the context right here is talking about the children of Israel, right? Which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place it were said unto them, unto who? Unto the children of Israel, right? Ye are not my people. There shall it be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living God, right? Because once upon a time, we weren't recognized as the sons of the living God, and we were not recognized as his people, even though, deep down inside we always were. But like the brother said, man, he brought out that scripture in Deuteronomy chapter 32, where it says, what? I will cause the remembrance of them to cease from among men. Right, the remembrance of us had ceased from among men, even from ourselves. Right, so if you go back to Romans 9 really quick, if you go back to Romans 9, and we'll finish out the next verse, 9 and 26. Linking back up with the Old Testament, right? And it shall come to pass that in the place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people, there shall they be called the children of the living God, right? Did we just read Hosea again? No, this is in Romans, because they're talking about the same thing. The same story is being played out, right? The only difference is Hosea was the first time it was being said, and in Romans it's actually starting to fulfill itself, right? Even to this day.
Right.
But with that, I yield.
Mighty point, right? One of the last points I'm going to bring out. I'm not going to go to it or anything, but when you read in the book of Romans, right, it tells us what that the people were cut off, right, to provoke, or they're being allowed to be grafted in to provoke the other ones to jealousy, right? When we look at the prodigal son, the older brother, right, he was jealous when the prodigal son came back and a party was thrown for him. He was jealous, man. He was kind of mad, right? And what the father had to do was encourage him, say, look, you my son too, right? Both of y'all are my sons, all right? And that middle wall of partition has been broken, right? There should be you shouldn't be unhappy because I'm praising him. You're my son. I'll praise you too. You know what I'm saying? And so when we think about the cutting off and the grafting in again, right, there has to be a judgment for the hypocrisy of the southern kingdom, right? So the Most High God had to chastise us a certain way as well, and that was by provoking us to envy and to jealousy, right? Like we see with the prodigal son, right? The prodigal son, he was doing well. I mean, the prodigal son's brother was doing well until he saw his brother come back, and then he started operating with hate and envy and jealousy, right? And the Most High God had to encourage him and say, hey, look, you my people too, right? I needed this to happen so that both of y'all could be in the house, all right? But if the brothers have any closing statements.
Fear God and keep the commandments, for this is the whole duty of man.
Man, we have not been cast away. We are the hopeful elect. Shabbat Shalom. Have a peaceful rest day.
Shalom.